Good morning, Vineyard kids and youth. This week we are continuing in a series called Storytellers. And in this series, we've had a couple special guests read us some stories about who God is and who we are and can be as God's children. And I just want to remind you guys before we get started that you are also storytellers, that you get to be a part of telling the story of who God is, what He's done for us, and who we are and get to be because we are God's children in the world. And so I just want to encourage you in that. So let's get started. Welcome, Miss Ashley.
Hi guys, Miss Ashley here. I'm going to read you a book called Seeds and Trees. Here we go. In the land of the king lived a special young prince who loved climbing trees and playing with friends. He lived in a castle overlooking the sea. He played in a field with his two kind of trees. This is the picture here. It's a beautiful castle there, huh? Pretty cool. He carried a satchel slung low on his waist to contain all the seeds he might want to exchange. Each seed was a word that someone had spoken. Each seed was collected, a trinket, a token. It didn't quite matter from where it had come, a stranger, a friend, a whisper made up. He rose every morning to water the seeds from each of the words he'd already received. What's gonna happen next? When someone spoke nicely, not anything mean, they'd hand him a seed whose true essence was green. But sometimes the seeds would come bringing pain. Seeds of dark color whose trees produced shame. Several dark seeds grew quickly, then withered. Others remained to grow slowly, unhindered. At the end of each day, he'd admire the seeds and go plant new ones and play in his trees. The trunks and the branches of dark trees were laden with thistles and thorns, causing pain as he scaled them. Climbing these trunks and these branches were tricky. Each part of the tree that he grasped was quite prickly. Each time the prince climbed, he was bruised and he was slit. Yet trees are for climbing, so through pain he'd persist. But each time he climbed up his trees, clothed in green, he felt safe and healed, as those trees weren't mean. Do you see the difference between the two trees there? Two different seeds. His green trees were strong, and they welcomed his touch. Their branches grew fruit he could eat or could clutch. He could sit at the base or climb to the peak. He could rest in the branches or play hide and seek. As years passed, he noticed his green trees were weakening. The trunks at the base of the trees needed strengthening. Now the soil was hardened as life was escaping. Their canopies were covered. His dark trees had shaded them. Uh-oh, what's going on? You see him playing in the trees, and then he notices there's a problem. What's gonna happen? He would plant his green seeds and dark seeds beside. Then they'd war with each other and try to survive. His green trees were strongest with plenty of light, but his dark trees grew stronger in the darkness of night. They shared the same water and sunlight to grow, but the dark trees were hiding the fruit that would show. The green trees caused life, joy, and peace to grow near, but the dark seeds killed soil and grew trees clothed in fear. Oh dear. The field the prince planted had started to show many trees of two kinds and the fruit that had grown. The fruit fell like seeds to the soil down below, filled with seeds to be gathered or given to sow. The young prince grew strong and became a young man. He continued to plant the seeds placed in his hand. He invited some friends to come play in his trees, but some liked to play in his trees from dark seeds. It's a beautiful picture, huh? He had one special friend who always spoke true, her words filled with grace, as good friends always do. She never spoke harshly and never spoke lies. She always spoke gently with loving replies. She always gave green seeds and never took back. She never ran out. There was never a lack. Her satchel was filled to the brim overflowing with green seeds, not dark seeds, each one for the sowing. There she is, true friend. She watched the prince still plant and water his grove. She watched and waited until asked to go. One day the prince said, "Hey friend, come along." She humbly agreed and began singing a song. To the grove, we will look down below at the roots and the soil and the trees that have grown. We will care for your green trees and even plant more seeds, but your dark trees will fall as this new life is sown. As he walked in his field with his friend by his side, the young prince took note as his trees came alive. Green trees swayed now to the sound of the time, but the dark trees stood stiff, clenched their fists, and seemed to root. There she is singing along. He admired the beauty the green trees created. After years of planting and watering seeds, they'd grown into mighty and powerful trees. The prince reminisced as he entered the grove. He thought back to each tree and the seed that was sown. He admired the beauty the green trees created, but noticed at their roots they were sadly ill-fated. His friend came prepared and brought tools along. The prince hadn't noticed, but his friend was quite strong. The tools that she carried were weathered and humble, a pickaxe, a saw, and an old rusty shovel. The friend asked the prince to please pick out a tree, one causing pain he'd rather not see. The prince went up to the skinny dark mass. His friend said, "Watch this." Then she took out her axe. With one mighty swing, the tree fell to the ground. Then his friend dug her shovel deep, deep down. The root had to die and be plucked from the dirt. Then a green seed was planted and covered the earth. The prince then exclaimed, "Can you cut down more trees?" His friend said, "Oh yes, and I have plenty of seeds." Many dark roots had tumbled so deep that it took them a while to dig underneath. Dark roots wrapped close around the green everywhere, so the friend of the prince had to tend to them with care. See them digging at the root, planting the new seed, and they are really getting in there. What's gonna happen next? Let's see. Her tools came in handy, the axe, the saw, the shovel, and others the friend had brought to the struggle. Then came the day when his forest was green. Not a dark tree was spotted, not any were green. The friend then surprised the grown prince with some gifts, some tools for his new daily watering shifts. She instructed the prince not to plant the dark seeds, but to go to the cliff and cast them out to sea. The prince held the green seeds, and those were all sage, but he tossed the dark seeds off the cliff to the waves. Then he traveled to new fields abounding with trees, making sure he packed his old satchel with seeds. To the grove, we will look down below at the roots and the soil and the trees that have grown. We will care for the green trees and even plant more seeds, but the dark trees will fall as this new life is sown. And there he goes with his satchel. Hope you've enjoyed this beautiful book, Seeds and Trees by Brandon Walden, illustrated by Kristen and Kevin Howdeshell. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your time at church this morning. I love you all so much and hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful week. Mwah! Bye-bye!
Thank you so much, Miss Ashley. All right, you guys, now we are going to have some time of discussion with your small group, and I want you guys to talk about what are some of the good seeds that have been planted in your life by the words that people have said about you. Maybe they've said, you're really smart, you're really brave, you're a good big sister, good big brother. Maybe they've said that you're a great leader, that you're really talented in some area. Where are those seeds of encouragement and like positivity that people have sown? And then if you guys are willing to open up and maybe be a little bit vulnerable, I'd love it if we could talk about maybe some of the bad seeds that have been planted by maybe the mean and not encouraging words that people have said, or maybe even things that we've said about ourselves, things that aren't true or don't reflect our identity in Jesus. So we could talk about those things and maybe see if together we could work to unroot those things and make room for all of the good things that people have said and the identity that we know that we have in Jesus and who we are, who God's made us to be. All right, and so I release you guys to go to your small groups. I hope you guys have a great discussion, and I'm looking forward to hearing a little bit about what some of you guys have talked about.